Hello everybody and welcome back to Sweet and Sour Soccer. And now, bear in mind it's the international break and the transfer window has ended. I thought now would be the perfect time to bring you my updated Premier League predictions for this season. Of course, I did them right at the start of the season, but since then, we've got a little bit of a flavour about what has been going on in the Premier League. And of course, we've also seen the close of the transfer window. So I thought, why not to have an updated Premier League predictions. So let's get straight into them. And as always, please do hit that like button and please do subscribe to the channel as well. And let's start off by speaking about Bournemouth, who for me had a pretty good transfer window and look like they've started the season relatively well in terms of goal scoring. Of course, they've added some firepower to their ranks. And this is going to be a season for them where I think they'll probably finish somewhere in the lower half of the table. But I don't think they're going to be battling a relegation battle. Now, interestingly, previously, I did have them placed in 15th position. But after a positive transfer window, I've moved them up 2 more spots to 13th position. Let's move on to speak about Arsenal now, who originally I did actually put in first spot. I did have them to win the title, which at the time, I think went against some people's views, and maybe you probably had a point. Now, it's an interesting one with Arsenal because although they have strengthened in the transfer window with the likes of Wright, Havertz, Timber, sadly, Timber has found himself injured. Arteta's tweaked with the squad because of trying to get Havertz in, which so far hasn't had the greatest of successes at times. And of course, I do feel they did miss out by not going out and getting a full out-and-out striker to lead the line, someone to maybe improve on Jesus and Nketiah, because I do think they needed that to challenge for the title. So no surprise I haven't now got them first, but I do still think they're going to be the second best in the league. So I've got Arsenal finishing second. Let's move on to speaking about Aston Villa and what a start to the season they've had and what a transfer window they've had as well. Things are looking very bright for Aston Villa in general. I previously had them placed in 6th position because I had a really good feeling about their what they were doing in the window at the time, and also just how they were moving as a club, obviously under Unai Emery. There's still questions about how much the Europa Conference League, now they're fully unconfirmed and in that, will affect them. But at the same time, I do think they've really strengthened the squad. They've got some good strength and depth, and I think they have got enough to compete on all fronts. With Villa, I've actually still placed them in 6th position because at the time I believed they would continue to have a good transfer window, and they've led up to my beliefs. I think they will finish 6th this window and go obviously one better with Europa League football. What's really interesting actually is, of course, subscribers confirmed this the other day. Of course, now the Champions League is places 1 to 5. The Europa League is 6th and 7th, and the Conference League is actually 8th, which is obviously a change that's being made coming into next season's change of the Champions League format. But guys, let's speak about Brentford now. And the Brentford are an interesting team for me who, they just look like a stable Premier League club, let's be honest. And the next thing for Brentford would have been to try and get into those European spots. I don't think they've done quite enough to do that in the transfer window, but they're still looking a very stable club. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the second half of the season as well, when they do get the firepower of Ivan Toney back. Or if he does move on, of course, they would get a massive sum for him and would be able to maybe strengthen the team come January. They're looking very good going forward at the moment, maybe giving away too many goals at times, but they're still going to have a very stable season. So for Brentford, I've actually previously had them placed in 13th position. I've actually improved that by a couple of positions, and I've gone up to 11th position for Brentford. Let's move on to speaking about the Seagulls, Brighton, who, lost some of their big stars this transfer window. Caicedo going, obviously, as well as McAllister. But they have replaced well, it does have to be said. Now, in my last video, I did have Brighton to place 7th position. I did think they'd do enough. At the time, I thought would be to get back in the European football and the Conference League. Well, I've actually still got them in the Conference League because I have moved them down 1 place to 8th position, and that's nothing against Brighton. It's more just how others have perhaps moved in the market, and maybe some of how much the bigger clubs, how some of them do have money that might be enough to just position them 1 place above Brighton. But I will come on to what I mean there shortly. Guys, Obviously, a newly promoted team. It is Burnley up next to speak about. And of course, they've made an absolute ton of signings. I lost count of how many it was. It was around 13 to 15 signings that they brought in to really try and bolster Vincent Kompany's squad. So far, for me, they've looked like a team that have probably got enough firepower to stop up. But I don't think they're going to be one of those Premier League teams that come up and then, break into the top half straight away. I think they're going to have a real stable season on their return to the Premier League. Be surprised if they get dragged into a relegation battle, especially in the latter part of the season. I previously had Burnley placed 14th position. I've bumped them one down, 15th position for me, but still a reasonably stable season. Chelsea next. So it's funny with Chelsea because I previously had them placed in 8th position. Of course, over the, before the Premier League went out for the international break, they did lose to Nottingham Forest at home. It's a weird one for Chelsea with me. They've spent that much money that surely, and they've got Pochettino in, surely at some point it's got to tick with this team. You look at what the squad on paper, you go, well, what are they actually missing in terms of, well, at least to get into some kind of European spot. They've surely got enough to do something with this squad. Yes, it's probably going to take some time to blend them in, but the second half of the season, especially, they should be very, very strong. Oh, God, I'm going to get absolutely roasted for this. But, guys, I've actually moved Chelsea from 8th position up to 4th. And I don't know how to explain this one. I've just got a feeling they've spent that much. Somewhere it has to click. Surely, somewhere it has to click. They've spent $1 billion in about the last 2 or 3 transfer windows. Surely that has to be enough to get themselves back into the top 4. They've showed elements of goodness, obviously, in certain games, and then others not so much. But surely they have to get back up there. Let's move on to Crystal Palace before you guys cook me in the comments for my decision of where to place Chelsea. And Crystal Palace, for me, have had a pretty disappointing transfer window. And I did call this early on when they lost Zaha. At the time, though, I would have to say they also looked like they were potentially going to lose Elise. Of course, Elise did stop, and he also signed a contract extension. They've obviously also started the season without him, haven't they? And he's obviously going to be a good addition when he comes back into the team. I previously had Crystal Palace placed 18th position. I had them as my last team to go down. Thankfully for you Palace fans, moved you slightly up. I've got you finishing 17th. I think you could still get dragged into a relegation battle. I'm still not convinced as Roy Hodgson as the manager, especially at the age that he is. And I do feel, when it comes to that Palace rebuild, things have kind of gone a bit backwards this season, really. It was supposed to be a new identity of football. I'm not that convinced that, with the move of keeping Roy, if I'm honest, well done. He kept you up last season. But I do think you're taking backward steps by keeping him on. Let's move on. Speaking about another club, in all honesty, I think could be in trouble, and the Toffees. I'd be surprised if too many of your fans really disagree with me, to be honest. Previously, in my last video, I did have you just staying up in 17th position. It'd be good for you if you can keep Calvert-Lewin fit. It'll be good for you if you can keep your starting 11 fit. In some ways, I think if you keep your starting 11 fit for the majority of the season, you'll be all right. I really do. I think although things haven't looked fine so far this season, and you have, let's face it, not looked great, you probably just have enough with that starting 11 to stay up. The issue I have, you look at your bench, and I'll be honest, there's just no strength and depth there at all, especially as you've let other players such as Iwobi go. You have brought in a couple of strikers that are a bit of unknown entities at the moment and could be absolute difference makers. And of course, that's something that the Toffees, you Everton fans, will be hoping for. Sadly, I've had to move you down one place to 18th position. But let's face it, you defy the odds every year and find a way to stop up. It could happen again. It wouldn't surprise me if it happens again. So, yeah, sadly in 18th, but I think it's going to be a tough season. Talking of tough seasons, I think these guys could be in for a lot tougher season than they did the previous season. And honestly, if they'd lost João Pereira without replacing him, they probably would have took up Everton's position. I'm being completely honest. I think if they would have lost him, the playmaker, the man that makes things tick, I think they've had that bad a window. I probably would have placed them genuinely in 18th position. Thankfully for Fulham fans, they did manage to keep it, and I think that's enough to keep you guys up. But regardless of that, I'm still wondering at times where are the goals going to come from. A 5-1 heavy defeat it was before the international break to Manchester City. Of course, you can't read too much into that. The week before, of course, a 2-2 impressive draw against Arsenal. But I just worry for you guys. I really do. You've replaced Mitrovic with Jimenez. I was expecting another striker to come in. They obviously didn't. I just worry a little bit. I think you'll need something to bolster your squad in January. But at this moment right now, I've actually got you placed in 16th position, which is 4 places down from where I previously had you, which was actually 12th. Liverpool. Hi guys, just a quick one for me before we get back to these Premier League predictions. If you are enjoying the video, as always, please do hit that like button and please do subscribe as well. We've had 250 of you join within the last month, so we'd love to keep that growth going. So hit that subscribe button and let's get back to my Premier League predictions. Liverpool, let's speak about you guys next. And of course, it was the midfield rebuild this season. You may have not got your first choice. You may have not got your second choice in some cases with Lavia and Caicedo. But in the end, you have rebuilt it. The likes of McAllister coming in, Endo coming in, Gravenbach coming in, and who cannot forget Szoboszlai as well. When you look at your forward line as well, I think you've got a lot to go with. We still don't know what's fully going to happen with Salah. And by the time this video comes out, who knows? You may have even accepted a massive bid from Saudi Arabia. But regardless of that, you have got a fantastic front line. The likes of Diaz, Jota, and Darwin Núñez can all bring something different, and they can all offer a lot going forwards. Defensively, you maybe look at like you could be a little bit lacking at the moment. Is Van Dijk over the hill? That's a question that has to be asked. Well, regardless of that, I think you've got a lot of firepower, and I've actually got you back in the Champions League. Bit of a surprise one here. I think you'll do well. I've gone actually third in the table, and I think I previously had you third as well. So I've kept to my guns with that one. Luton Town up next, and Luton, I did have you guys previously in 19th position. Since then, you've gone and strengthened your squad, and you've continued to do what I thought you might do. You're building almost a championship super squad, so if you do go down, you might be in a good position, providing you keep everyone to come straight back up. And you've had to do it with limited resources, hence why you've gave people like Ryan Giles a chance to impress in the Premier League, and people like such as Ross Barkley one last chance to show what they can do. Regardless of that, I can't really move you anywhere from 19th. I do still think you'll struggle. Kenilworth Road, maybe where you get the majority of your points, but I don't think those points will be enough to keep you up, sadly. Let's move on to from one side of the table right to the top end. Look, I'm not going to waste any time with City. I think you can probably guess where I've placed them. First position, I previously had them placed in second position. I thought Arsenal were going to do enough. They didn't. I think City have gone on to improve their squad even more. They look electric. Haaland doesn't look like a one-season wonder. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone at all. City will just keep on marching on, doing what they're doing. I think they'll win the league again. It wouldn't surprise me if they have one of their best seasons. Could it be a centurious season? Who knows? But I reckon they get certainly close. Moving on from one side of the Manchester to the other side of Manchester now, and we're speaking about Manchester United, who have a very disjointed midfield, let's be honest. You know, the likes of Eriksen, Mal, thankfully for them, at least got Amrabat in, but am I going to say that Amrabat's going to be an absolute game changer? The honest answer is probably not. Helps to balance the midfield a little bit, but I don't really know. Rashford, obviously, you know, he needs to be playing out on that left-hand side for me for United to have a good season. And I did think they would really strengthen when I did my previous Premier League predictions. I had them placed as high as fourth. I really don't think that it's the case. I think there's quite a lot of squads which are better than Manchester United now, and I even could be slightly being too kind to have them where I'm placed now, in all honesty. I have gone for 7th position. I don't think Manchester United get Champions League football this season. Let's move on to another team that is in the Champions League at the moment, and that is Newcastle United. Now, of course, 5 spots is up for grabs for the Champions League come next season. And in my last Premier League predictions, I had Newcastle qualifying in that 5th position. Although at the time, I did think that's what would get them into Europa League. Newcastle, for me, I think they've strengthened well. They've done reasonable, brought really good talent in. there's a little bit of a question over, what happens if a few injuries are picked up. What will their reserve, their subs, etc. do? I think they're probably better positioned in some positions than others for me. But regardless of that, I still do fancy Newcastle to continue having a good season. I previously said fifth. I'm going to continue to say the exact same, fifth position. Let's move on to Nottingham Forest now, who have had a very good transfer window. And it did start a bit slow from Nottingham Forest. I said that on my last video, but they have brought in a whole host of talent. They pulled off a big win against Chelsea, which was away as well, wasn't it? It was at Stamford Bridge, which is interesting because obviously last season, Nottingham Forest's home form was great. Though away form, not so much. So that's a really good sign. And Langa looking good. Awanui, he didn't manage to get a goal last game, but he followed it up with an assist. He looks a real talent. And then you've obviously brought in a whole other string of talent as well. For me, I think Forest continue to have a stable season. I previously had you placed in 11th, which on reflection, I was maybe being a little bit kind at the time to Nottingham Forest. I'll be completely honest. So I've moved you down to 12th. Which probably doesn't make sense with how much I've bigged you up. But I think it's because I was a little bit too kind last time. I think 12th still a really good, respectable position for Nottingham Forest's second season in the Premier League. They're going to be stable, no relegation battle. It's just going to be a nice, good season for Forest. Let's move on to a team which I don't think is probably going to have a very stable season. In my previous predictions, I said 20th place. I think at that point, if I recall, they lost Ndiaye. They then went on to lose Harmer as well. Not Harmer. That's wrong. They lost Burge. They brought in Harmer. I knew that didn't sound right the second I said it. Harmer looks a really good talent. It does have to be said that Ramsey also looks a decent talent as well. And they have made some additions. The one thing I do have to focus on now is the fact that Bramall Lane is going to have to be where Sheffield United are really, really good. So far, lost to City, drew to Everton. I think they look very weak defensively. I still think Sheffield United sadly do go down, and I do sadly think it's in 20th position. Let's move on to Spurs now, and a club that has started with some oomph. It does look like they maybe are moving quite well, but there isn't a lot of strength and depth. And I'll continue to say that because that's really where I worry for Spurs. And that's why in my previous predictions, before they even lost Kane, I thought I'd place them in 9th position. The way they've rebuilt has shocked me in some ways. They've brought in some decent talent. Brennan Johnson coming in, Maddison coming in, and things are obviously moving really, really well under the new manager. And I do really like the look of what he's doing with Spurs. But I think this is a rebuild season. This is a regroup season. And then I think give him time, allow him to progress. I don't think he'll get things right all the time. But the next season, you might be able to do something more. The problem is for Spurs, the lack of strength and depth, and also how other teams have improved around them. I've still got Spurs placed in 9th position, which I might be being a bit harsh, but I just have a feeling that this is going to be a rebuild season. Let's talk about West Ham now. And I believe that these last time round, I had these placed in 10th position. Well, I mean, look, Declan Rice has gone. They've re-strengthened with a really good squad, and they do look really good. Of course, they've got the Europa League to contend with. And I think in my last prediction, similar to what I said with Nottingham Forest, I think I was being too kind to West Ham in my previous ones. So I have got West Ham still placed in 10th position, but that's no disrespect to West Ham. I have just thought, I've got your old badge up there, haven't I? I think, yeah, that's the old West Ham badge. I think I still prefer that badge, to be honest. But yeah, very respectable 10th position. Wouldn't surprise me, though, if you do more. I'm looking at the top half of this Premier League, and it's so competitive. It really, really is. Wolves up next. And guys, if you've done the maths, so we keep it up with every place, you'll know where I've put Wolves. Previously, I said 16th position. Wolves, since then, have continued to lose some players in Mateus Nunes, but finally some signings did come in towards the end of the window. Maybe I'm being a bit of an optimistic Wolves fan, but I don't think we're going to end up in a relegation battle. But you look at the top half, like I've just said, that top half is, wow. I honestly, that top half, so many teams could challenge for those European spots. Sadly for Wolves, I don't think we do, but I don't think we go down either. I'm placing us in 14th position. Guys, that is my Premier League updated predictions. Let me know yours in the comments below. And apart from my Chelsea prediction, also let me know where I've been a bit stupid or where I have gone wrong. And guys, I will catch you on our next one. If you have enjoyed this video, there's weekly Premier League predictions that we do as well as Championship predictions, as well as a live Premier League video as well every single week on this channel. So please, if you've not done so before, please do subscribe to the channel and please do hit that like button. We'd love you to come back and see more of our content. So have a good one. Take care. Goodbye.